We'll call a meeting of the Door County Board of Supervisors for Tuesday, July 29th, 2014, and rise and pledge allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I got a comment. Yes, roll call. Are you ready?
Morning, Dick.
Why do we have roll call by the county clerk when we're doing it all by ourselves?
You got that back up.
You get this?
How easy is it? I saw how
We have 19 present, 2 voters are absent.
I swear I saw him.
Motion to present the agenda.
So move.
Moved by Mark Miller, second by
Second.
Chuck Brandon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That has passed. Correspondence, we have a letter from Dan Warple on roundabouts, and a thank you from Mrs. Jim Knudsen. And the unassigned fund balance as of July 8th, 2014. Anybody have any questions on them? If not, we'll go to public comment. Does anybody in the public like to make a comment?
Turn that thing off.
Good morning, County Board Supervisors. Gary Soul from Sturgeon Bay. You all probably know me as the Cave Explorer. We had the lively discussion last time in regards to excavating the so-called undisturbed sediments in Horseshoe Bay Cave. And as our grotto historian, I just had to come here today to share with you the most remarkable piece of history that is so timely that I had to make this meeting. The information is this. We often talk about how history repeats itself. Well, as we stand here, July 29th, 1914, Horseshoe Bay Farms had a new owner, the United Fruit Growers. But even more remarkable, and in the newspapers, in my research, here's an article. The first thing they did, guess what? A crew of workmen busy excavating the front part of Horseshoe Bay Cave. And this not only happened during July, it went into the fall as well. And I thought this was amazing, even when they talked about electrically lighting the cave from a generator plant that would be located in a proposed hotel a quarter-mile away. So I thought, this is amazing. Now you start to link other parts of history together, and suddenly they all come together just like a puzzle. Fast forward, 1973, 1974, I was doing a University of Wisconsin project for Green Bay that I was attending, and I was doing a soil and min analysis. And I excavated down in the cloakroom 38 inches, or 3 feet 2 inches, and that's, by the way, how I know how much depth there is for the ground down below, and also in terms of walking. And then, of course, we also excavated for the gate, so we had 2 control points that we knew. But here's the amazing part. We were going to do a radioactive carbon 14 dating of the cave at its lowest level to determine the age of the sediments. Well, as I was getting right down there and all excited, suddenly something mysterious happened. And I didn't know about this 1914 project at the time. Guess what I found? A sawed board. So that ruled out doing the expensive radioactive carbon 14 dating, because it was obvious, how would a sawed board get here if these sediments have been undisturbed since glacial times? Well, we all can think now, and looking back in retrospect, if there was a sawed board and you got a really rough kind of cave floor, and they were doing the work of cleaning out all this debris at the time, they would have had a wheelbarrow. And can't you imagine a wheelbarrow going along over a board with the front wheel riding on it real nice and smooth? So now we had 2 things that come together like a puzzle. One final thing, did it make sense? If indeed this was all the case, how could the sediments be so nicely smoothed out to give the impression that they'd always been there for literally thousands and thousands of years. Well, my mother once told me that Plum Bottom used to flood. Now, I've been here since June of 1964. I've never seen water up on the highway. That's a quarter of a mile long valley, as you know, on the way going towards Egg Harbor. Now, what happened was they'd bring the school bus down, they'd open the back door, the emergency door, get in a rowboat, row the kids across the lake, another bus would come down, open the back door, they'd get in and continue on to Egg Harbor. Now, this happened every day, like clockwork. But all of a sudden, one day they come back, guess what? The lake's gone, and they're removing barricades. And they said, well, what happened? What's changed? They said around 11 o'clock that morning, a sinkhole opened up in Plum Bottom, and the water started to recede, and of course, as it opened up more, I suppose because the water pressure, it suddenly, after a while, came rushing out at Horseshoe Bay. Now, we also know when they did the studies with the logged in, they found that the water travels to the west and northwest, and even mentioned about Horseshoe Bay. So that kind of confirms it. But the question is, a lake? You know, I'm always one, I want facts. I don't want hearsay. Well, lo and behold, news of 50 years ago, here it talks about a particularly good year at Plum Bottom. The lake was great for swimming. The deepest point was 6 feet deep. So you can imagine the amount of water pressure that would have gone in. Now, it could have taken some surface material. It could have redistributed the ground in the cave. And this is a one-time event, because to this date, I have never, ever seen Plum Bottom have standing water, certainly not over the highway like they did. So in summary, we got 3 points of history that all come together. And we all know the late Paul Harvey, who would tell a story. Well, as Paul Harvey would say, so now you know the rest of the story. Good day.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Is there any supervisor response to public comment? Leo?
No, I just want to go back to the correspondence that we received,
Okay.
particularly one from Dan Whipple in regard to the roundabouts, and it came to highways as well. I believe our activity was to give it to highway safety. And when is that date coming up?
7th of August.
Okay.
All right.
Any other response? Administrator's monthly report?
Would you like to skip down to 2000?
Okay, we can go down, we're going to go down to resolution 2014-63, opposition to proposed lapse in state funding to circuit court system, because the judge is here and the judge would like to speak and he has to get back to judge, I guess. Susan, you want to introduce it as a motion and then?
I move that we adopt resolution number 2014-63, opposition to proposed lapse in state funding to the circuit court system. This is a resolution similar to others from other counties because they are facing the same dilemma that we are. And Judge Ehlers is kind enough to be here today to answer questions.
Okay, is there a
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that.
Seconded by Ken Fisher. You could come up to the podium if you'd like, sir, whatever.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning.
Judge.
I stepped in as that gentleman was speaking. I agree with him. I don't like hearsay either. I don't know what he was talking about, but I don't like hearsay either. I'm here this morning, ladies and gentlemen, to urge you to pass this resolution. Apparently, Nancy Robillard has met with the legislative committee and was going to appear here today, but was unable to do so. So she asked me yesterday. Not only is she in favor of this, the county board passing this resolution, but Judge Diltz and I would also urge you to do the same. I don't want to stand up here and read at you, all of you, and I think Supervisor Kohlhout, I think Nancy shared this Wisconsin lawyer article with your committee, but let me just read one little excerpt from, and this is an article for the rest of you, from the Wisconsin lawyer, the June Wisconsin lawyer, was written by John Volker, who just recently left as the Director of State Courts for the state of Wisconsin. Quote, unfortunately, our county funding partners who provide the second leg of the funding stool do not have much wiggle room either. Counties face strict levy limits and have little ability to compensate for reduced state funding for court services. This puts tremendous pressure on counties to reduce court system costs. State aid to counties for court costs has not increased since 1999, and the amount has actually been reduced during the last several years. During state budget fiscal year 2008-2009, counties received $18.7 million in circuit court support payments from the state. During state fiscal 2012-2013, counties received $16.6 million. Counties are also picking up a larger percentage of circuit court costs. The amount has increased from 54% during fiscal 2007-2008 to 63% during fiscal year 2012-13. Financial pressures at the county level, driven in large part by levy limits, are already affecting court services. For example, 2 years ago, the Buffalo County Judge and Circuit Court Clerk of Courts offices had a combined staff of 6 county-funded positions. That dropped to 4.25 positions, specifically because of county funding issues, according to Chief Judge James Duval, Buffalo County Circuit Court. Duval notes, this brings to focus to the circuit court support payment and highlights its importance. It is imperative we maintain adequate reimbursement for guardian items, interpreters, and county operational costs through the circuit court support payment to avoid blowing up already stressed county budgets. The damage of court funding shortfall will fall directly on the backs of counties and then inevitably on the court system. This is not just a court issue, it is a county issue. There is nothing left to reduce in our county budgets without affecting the core functioning of one of the 3 independent branches of government. So I'm here to answer any questions. Would urge the county board to support this resolution. Any questions?
No questions.
There you go. I'm going to leave with Ms. Murphy some extra copies of this article. As I said, I know the
Thank you,
committee
Judge.
saw it, but if anybody else wants to read, and I probably violated somebody's copyright law by running copies of that off, but don't tell on me.
Thank you.
We'll go to the board if there are no questions, and the motion's been made and seconded. So everybody go to the voter board.
Confirm.
That is passed on a vote of 20 yes, 1 absent. Next item is the Administrator's Monthly Report.
Yes. Thank you, Judge. I'm glad that I followed that because, quite honestly, the 2 items that are on the monthly report this month talk about the importance of us educating our citizens. When we educate our citizens about the importance of the services that we provide, they in turn talk to their state elected officials. And as the judge was talking to us, it's all about the allocation of resources. And if we have our citizens talking to their state elected officials about the importance of maintaining court funding and, quite honestly, about maintaining county funding, hopefully it all works together as part of the same system. So the community open houses is something that Supervisor Kohout and Supervisor Miller and I have been working on with a couple of members of our citizens within our community. Seth, Mark, help me.
Weeder-Anders.
Thank you. And Helen Bacon. We've moved to a less intensive Citizens Academy to community open houses. Our first stop, we believe, is going to be the highway shop because that is a very complex set of how it is funded, and the more our citizens know about how it's funded, the better. Because remember, that's a multi-funding source that works for our highway shop. The towns, everybody's working together to make sure that the funds are there for the highways. So it looks like that's going to be the first community open house. There'll be more in the months ahead on where we go with that. The monthly column this month focused on how we implement that portion of our mission statement that talks about its strategic priority number 1, promote a diverse and growing economy producing high-quality jobs. It's difficult for government to do that on its own, so we have, of course, DC-EDC here in Door County, and we are the largest funder of DC-EDC with a commitment of $55,000. The article itself, which was co-written by Sam Perlman, the Economic Development Manager, details the great job that DC-EDC is doing to promote a good economy here in Door County. And you also have two-year board members that serve on the DC-EDC board in Kathy Schultz and Chuck Brand. Dick Haynes is also on the revolving loan fund. Those are important decisions that the three of them make with regard to the job creation here in Door County and improving our economy in general. That's all I have for the monthly report for this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Minutes of the 24th June meeting, is there a motion to accept them? Motion by Donna City, seconded by Kathy Schultz. Are there any corrections or additions? Okay. There's one correction that's got to be made. I don't know who did it, but I did not make the motion to adjourn. Someone else did. So if someone can recall who did that, let us know.
You do read them.
Pardon?
You do read the minute.
Yeah, thank you. I was waiting to see. I had to tell Jill that I read it because I was waiting for someone to correct us, but nobody else read them apparently.
I saw that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's passed. The first resolution is the International Migratory Bird Day. Richard Verley, would you like to make a motion and have a second and explain it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to Resolution 2014-62, International Migratory Bird Day, hopefully everybody read all I'll make a motion to approve this resolution.
Okay, is there a second by Ben Meyer? Go ahead.
Hopefully everybody read all the whereas, and I'll just read toward the end here. Now therefore be it resolved that the Door County Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim the second Saturday in May as International Migratory Bird Day in the County of Door. Be it further resolved that the County Board urges all citizens to celebrate this observance and to support efforts to protect and conserve migratory birds and their habitats in the community and world at large. There is absolutely no fiscal impact to the taxpayers, and I think this is a really good thing to support.
Are there any questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is passed unanimously. Next item is a transfer of non-budgeted funds, Justice Center Computer Room Cooling System. David Leno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion, we approve Resolution 2014-64, transfer non-budgeted funds for the Justice Center Computer Room Cooling System.
Is there a second? Seconded by Chuck Brand.
Last year, for the 2014 CIP program, we approved $74,000, which was an estimated completion target to change the cooling system at the Justice Center computer installation area. It has come to our attention currently the budget amount was not enough. We've been asked to increase that amount by $14,165. However, I would like to amend that dollar amount. Based on new information, we figured out that $1,406.96 was not included as part of the engineering cost. So the new actual total that we would be asking for is $15,572.
Okay. Has anybody got any questions? If not, we'll go to the voter board. Vote yes or no. This take 2/3. Where's Joe? Hit her again. I know. Haynes and Mr. Zipper. That has passed at a vote of 20 yes, 1 absent. Next item is the intergovernmental agreement, Dorkey, Shawano County, provision of comprehensive community services on a regional basis. Mark Miller.
I'd make a motion to approve 2014-65. Basically, I believe it was a couple of months ago, we voted to,
Let me get a second here. Seconded by Susan. Okay, go ahead.
a couple months ago, we voted to approve the formation of the CCS program here. This completes that cycle. As the Kewaunee County Board said at their meeting, which they passed it, if you don't pass it, we pay for 40% of the program. If you do pass it, the program's paid for 100% with Medicaid money. That's the basic explanation there.
Does anybody have any questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is passed. Next item is the approval of the Wisconsin Coastal Management Program for Dunes Lake Protection and Feasibility Study. Who would like to speak on that? Let me get to it first.
Dan. Fisher.
Who is it?
Fisher.
Ken Fisher. Go ahead. Make a motion and get a second, and we'll...
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we adopt resolution number 2014-66.
I'll second that.
Okay. Go ahead and explain it, Ken.
Okay, quite simply, it's a $5,000 grant to do the study of the Dunes Lake Protection Area. The Dunes Lake, that's that lake by Institute in Valmy that Mr. Schuster came to us a few months back and explained it is dying faster than it should. This outside firm is going to do the work, and Bill explained to us that that's the best way to do it rather than do that study internally. And as it says on line 13, anything in excess of 1,000, we have to come to the committees have to come to the county board, and that's what we're doing here.
Does anybody have any questions on this? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That has passed. Next item is a letter of agreement, Cellcom lease space on Door County owned towers.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, David.
I would like to let you know that I will be abstaining from voting for the next three items, 2014-67, 68, and 69, as
Okay.
my brother is signatory to the document.
Okay. David Hanigo, you want to explain this? Make a motion, then we'll get a second, then explain it.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 2014-67, letter of agreement, Cellcom lease space on county-owned towers.
I'll second it.
Okay, do you want to do all three of them at once, or should we do them separately? We'll do them separately, huh?
They're listed separately.
Okay, go ahead.
They're all related, but this is in reference to the many years we've been allowed to locate equipment on Cellcom's towers. They have asked to be granted the same privilege to locate equipment on our towers.
Does anybody have any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is passed. 67, you want to, or 68 rather?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 2014-68, tower space lease agreement for Bailey's Harbor site.
I'll second it.
Second by Don City. Any more explanation, or is it all?
Other than that, it's new equipment that we're locating on one of their towers.
Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is passed. 69, same. Make a motion, David?
Yep. Make a motion to adopt resolution 2014-69, amendment to the lease agreement for Cellcom Towers, Fish Creek, Jacksonport, and Washington.
Second.
Second by, I didn't see who said that. Oh, John Cook, okay. Are there any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is passed. Capital improvement. David, do you want to handle that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Make a motion, we approve Resolution 2014-70, which is inclusion of the capital improvement plan 2015 through 2019 in this year's budget.
Second.
Seconded by
Second.
Chuck grant.
At the last finance meeting, finance approved the capital improvement plan. I'm sure Shirley is here to answer questions, but I would just want to go through and point out a few changes that were made by the finance committee as to what was requested. First of all, the highway department actually removed County M during their meeting on the 14th in the amount of $540,000. The finance committee set aside $500,000 for an EMS building, Central Station. So the $500,000 was removed, that came from the unassigned fund. So that came out of the capital plan. In addition, finance committee moved upgrade to our phone switch and upgrade to a computer platform in Door County in the amount of $152,500 and $200,000 out of the CIP for 2015. We also set aside $300,000 from the unassigned fund balance and removed the senior center ARDC $1.2 million line item out of the CIP program and set aside $300,000 in the building fund for that. So the total CIP that we are requesting for the 2015 year is $5,757,334.
On our resolution that we have, we got all those blanks filled in there, the tax levy. Is that what you, long-term financing in that, or? Shirley, do you have, can you come forward and give us those numbers?
I can give you 3 of them.
You got those numbers, I hope. There's 4 of them on that resolution.
Okay, basically with the KIP today and what Supervisor Lino, all of the items are correct as far as the Finance Committee is concerned. One area that's on this KIP eligible for long-term financing is a 3-year project, and the committee or the county board needs to make the decision on whether they want to proceed with long-term financing or to look at long-term financing for that project, which comes to $2,708,500.
Mr. Chairman, could I just add that typically the Finance Committee takes up at later meetings where we would try and put the dollars in under the tax levy, the long-term financing, unassigned fund balance, et cetera. We weren't prepared to make those recommendations yet till we get a little bit further along in the budget process.
Okay. And for everybody, must remember that this can be adjusted up to the final moment in November.
That is
any way we
correct.
so choose.
That is correct.
This is not cast in stone.
No, this
Yes.
just sets the tone for the budget, helps us out to let us know where we're at and what adjustments may have to be made before November.
Okay. Are there any questions? Now's the time to ask them. Ben?
So what do we do with lines 21 through 26 on the resolution? Do we just not fill those in at this point? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, you could fill them in, but I'm just stating it's subject to change as we go through the process. So as the CIP is presented, the departments and finance is saying, here's where it could fit. But Finance Committee will look at this and decide, do we need to do unassigned funds, contingency funds? Do we need to change it based on other things that are happening in the budget? The CIP is always the first step we take, but we have several months yet of seeing where we actually are in the budget, and that affects how and where we actually get the funds from. So I'll use an old term. It'll be a placeholder going forward.
Go ahead, Susan.
Just to follow up on that, but if for some reason we weren't, the numbers would be the ones that are on here? The tax levy?
Right. The levy would be the $3,357,419. The EMS transfer from unassigned fund balance would be $500,000. the transfer from unassigned fund balance for the Senior Resource Center / ADRC improvements would be $300,000, and the eligible for long-term would be $2,708,500. Even though that the first year is $1.3 million, it would be, if the county board decided by November that they were going to borrow, you would borrow for the entire project, not just 1 year.
I would add one other item. Somebody questioned the Senior Center ADRC $300,000. There is already an existing $300,000 in that reserve, so this would bring it up to $600,000.
Does anybody have any questions? Ben?
What was the rationale from reducing the senior center ADRC improvements from 1.2 million to 300,000 at this time?
The 1.2 has been put in there every year for the last 3 years. The Finance Committee felt we're still no closer to determining what we're going to do with the building than we were 3 years ago, but we recognize that something will probably be happening in the future, so we wanted to continue to fund at least something into a building reserve towards that end.
Very good.
Biz?
Well, I was going to have a real lot to say when I looked at my Zoom, but this sheet that was passed out this morning kind of changes everything from what was on our Zoom that we could read over the last few days. I would hope that the property committee chairman, Meyer, would be thinking in the future to put not only the EMS building, but the senior center building on our agenda, start talking about this before. I was going to say the 1.2 million that was on our Zoom for 2 years in a row. I thought, how could those numbers even be there when the property committee, who was actually in charge of it after they dissolved the ad hoc committee in 2012, it was given to the property committee, and the property committee has not even talked about anything yet. But now, as Mr. Lino said, the 1.2 million is scratched out, and they're just setting aside the $300,000 for now. So in the future, I would think that we would be talking about these buildings, the property committee would be talking about these buildings so that we, especially on the EMS building, we haven't even identified, it says in here, exact location of the new station is not clearly identified at this time. So, there's a lot of work to be done here before we start talking about setting aside a lot of money to do buildings when we don't even know what we're going to do yet.
Okay. Ben?
It's premature at this time to really move forward on either of these projects. For the Senior Resource Center ADRC improvements, the decision still has to be made about what to do with the kitchen, whether we're going to do a full-size kitchen or a smaller kitchen. And I don't want to go into that discussion here. The Human Services Department is doing their due diligence in determining what we need to accomplish at the Senior Resource Center. As for the EMS building, it's my understanding that the voters of Southern Door are going to get a say on whether or not this whole project goes forward, and until that occurs.
No, that's not correct. This is the money that's being put aside this time is not for the Bug Fire Department. This is for a new ambulance
Central
garage in the
Central Station
in Sturgeon Bay, with the possible addition to 6 paramedics and another ambulance or 2. That's what that is for.
Then that should come to the property committee.
It will come, but, it's still in discussion, but you gotta remember, you gotta start putting some of these pieces of the puzzle together for the budget. Even though you don't know exactly how much is gonna be spent, you still gotta plan ahead that you got money there when it comes time to spend it. And that'll be a discussion over the next year probably on what to do. Correct?
If I could. Yes, this is really a chicken or an egg argument. This is a plan. That's what it is. If we don't have a plan for where we're going for the next 5 years, we won't know where we're going for the next 5 years. So this is simply a plan where placeholders are put in here because we know that this expense may come. As to the bug fire station issue, I think the chairman was waiting to see what happens in the communities, Brussels, Union, Gardner, and what happens with those communities with regard to the referendums that are going to be before them. We don't have an intergovernmental agreement in place for what percentage we'll be paying as a county. If we'll be paying, that decision has not been made either. So that comes later. The central station, how that got here was our new EMS director, who is at another meeting right now. He couldn't be here today. Knows that the needs within the central station are such that if we make a decision to add 6 new paramedics, that we will need some improvements to the central station. I'm looking at Supervisor Gunlickson as the chair of that meeting. His committee has heard that request, and it is only a request. So this is early in the process and subject to amendment on what happens with the Finance Committee and the budget. But you need to have a place so that we can work this plan and plan your work or whatever cliche goes along with that. That's what this is, simply. There are no decisions that have been made with regard to this except a placeholder, to quote our Finance Committee chair.
Good?
I'll just expand a little bit further. Property Chairman Meyer is correct, and it's a little premature on the senior center because of the kitchen. As far as I know, it was turned over to Ag and Extension, to Rob Burke, to do some research to try to figure out the pros and cons of whether the kitchen could be handled from out at the Justice Center or if it should be included in the new building. And I'm sure Rob is working on that and going to eventually come back with the pros and cons of, the best way to go.
If I could, that item is before the Human Services Board, looking at the chair of that committee, who
It's supposed to be this coming month, yeah.
has received an update from the Human Services Director. He's spending his time working on how to resolve the issue of a kitchen and how do we do the senior meals program. So he's spearheading that effort. But again, this is a placeholder item so that we don't lose sight of we have a building that's in need of some repair or possibly replacement, regardless of what happens with that kitchen. So that's why it's in the CIP. And I think the Finance Committee was very wise in reducing that number with the testimony of our Human Services Director, in particular saying that 1.2 is probably too much of a number for the moment because we don't know where we're going with this project just yet. But again, a placeholder.
We also have in reserve a dollar amount for the repair establishment of the central station right now, don't we?
We have
Correct.
500,000
Okay.
in the reserve for
In
the
addition- and this
EMS
would be
central
in addition
station.
to- Okay.
And this would be in addition, likewise, the same situation with the Senior Resource Center. This is in addition to what already is there. I don't know if anyone wants any information, but I put some information in the KIP. It's toward the back in regards to if the county board would decide to go to borrowing for the dark fiber, 2.7 million. So you have that information. If you have any questions on that, I can respond to them at the moment, or I can respond at a later date.
Are there any other questions? Charles?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to thank Dave Lino and the rest of the Finance Committee for, and I'm a member and I'll dissolve myself out of this, but for putting these things into a placeholder position. And we should be fortunate that we have money to be able to set aside and start establishing these positions for these buildings and so on that we're moving forward on. It's a lot better to have the money in hand than to decide to build a building and then wonder where we're going to get it from. And we're talking 2 and 3 years on some of these projects, so we have a chance to build it up.
Correct. And it's a good thing that we're talking about it now in July, when the budget isn't due till November. A lot of times over the years, a lot of this information didn't get to you until September, October.
Point.
So we're being pre-warned or pre-planned to think about this so we can make a good decision come November.
Could I
John.
add one more piece on this?
I don't know if I fully understood Maureen's explanation of financing for the southern EMS building should the referendum go through. Will you clarify that? Because we have to have good information out there when it comes to this referendum.
Well, I think that there already was a resolution that we support that. The county board does. But there are a couple of pieces yet that have to occur. And I would look to John Cook, because he's been more involved in this effort than I have. If Dan Williams were here, our EMS director, he's been handling this issue, but he, as I said, is at another meeting. But there are referendums going on in the 3 communities. Am I correct about that, John?
Currently, we have an attorney working on a referendum question that applies to all 3 townships. It'll be up to the voters come November 4th to say yes or no to the vote, and I believe that's what the board today is recognizing, that we're waiting for a decision from the voters of Southern Door, specifically Brussels, Union, and Gardner, to either approve or disapprove the referendum at that time. I don't think the board would be prudent in moving ahead by saying we will at this time do anything until we find out what the voters are actually going to do.
And our resolution that we passed a month or 2 ago says that.
Yes.
And I think there's a 2-year window.
Yes.
Correct. There's a sunset of 2 years. That gives us an opportunity again, should it fail, to reconfigure or rethink our processes, and we would move on from there.
And just like we did with regard to the North Station in Sister Bay, we had an intergovernmental agreement that laid out the terms. So depending upon what happens with those decisions in those home communities, then I would envision that with your permission, we would go out and negotiate an intergovernmental agreement with Brussels, Union, Gardner, or Bug Fire Department. However, our legal authority says we should do it. By the way, he's preoccupied today in another meeting as well.
And John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, one of the reasons we put the sunset in is that we have to do something at the Southern Door Ambulance Station eventually, and if it doesn't pass for going with the fire department, we're going to have to discuss it, come up with an alternate plan.
That would be correct.
And I don't want to leave out our representative from Union. We've heard from Brussels, Gardner, and Union. I don't know if you have anything to add.
Not
Supervisor Burr.
Okay, and the capital improvement, is there any more questions? If not, go to your voter board to approve or disapprove.
My machine is not working very well.
You gotta press yes first.
What?
You gotta do yes first.
I did.
No.
Got to retrain them.
I was really voting no all the time.
That has passed on a vote of 20 yes, 1 absent.
Forgot to add batteries.
Next item,
With the no.
the 2013 year-out closeout. David, you want to explain that one?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion, we approve Resolution 2014-71, which is the 2013 year-end closeout to the general fund.
Okay, is there a second? Seconded by Kathy. Go ahead.
As we did last month, we passed the carry-forward resolution, which was carrying forward funds from the 2013 and the 2014 budget year. Now we have to do the general fund closeouts. This is remaining funds that were out in departments, or this is, also shows all the transfers in and out of all the various assigned funds. So this is kind of the roll-up, final roll-up of all those numbers.
Does anybody have any questions? If not, we'll go to the voter board for this one. This one also requires 2/3 vote.
It moved out, it's mine now.
John? That has passed on a vote of 20 yes, 1 absent. Next item is the support of participation in a mutual box mutual aid box alarm system. Joel, would you like to make a motion and get a second and explain it?
I'd like to bring forward Resolution 2014-72 for approval, please.
Is there a second by Susan? Go ahead.
What this is in a nutshell is probably the last piece of the big puzzle in the county is letting fire, rescue, and EMS all have mutual aid agreements between us and other governmental entities for assistance in events of, catastrophes or, no specific magnitude of events, but it's putting everybody on the same page and being able to utilize resources for a long distance if needed. So it's a very good thing.
Is there any questions on this? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is passed. There are no ordinances. There are no special reports. Is there any oral committee reports? Review of the minutes of the committees. Is there any questions on any of them? Well, maybe we should take a break. Review of the vouchers, claims, and bills. Has anybody got any questions? I have no announcement. Do you have any?
I do not.
The next meeting is August 26th at 9 a.m. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll
Don
second
City,
that, Mr.
second by
Chairman.
Ken Fisher. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.